Were you silent or were you silenced? Okay. Very nice. I don't think I've done it since. I don't know where the hell that came from. Whoop. Hi, I'm Oprah Winfrey. And today we're going to be taking a look at some of the iconic moments of my career. So excited to see these. Here we go.
Listen carefully. Inside one of these boxes is a key. Do not open it yet. Okay, everybody listen up. Here is the deal. If your box has a key, you will be the last person today to get one of those cute little G6s. Okay?
Oh my gosh, this is a Celine suit. I'd gotten this suit to wear for this occasion. And then Gail, whose idea it was to give away the cars, by the way, was at this show, and she comes into my dressing room and she goes, "You're not wearing that, are you?" And I go, "Yeah." She goes, "Oh, I just think it's too suity. I think you should wear something more fun. It looks too much like..." And I go, "I am wearing this red suit because it matches the bows on the cars, Gail."
All right, open your boxes. Open your boxes. 1, 2, 3.
I love this. I remembered, like, in the middle of the night that we hadn't taped the keys down in the boxes. And it occurred to me, and I said to the producers who were up all night long, actually, for this show, we got to tape the keys in the boxes because people will, the first thing you're going to do is shake the box. So I don't know if most people know this. We'd already given out 11 cars. We had given out 11 cars on this particular day. And there was the 12th car. There was supposedly one car left. And everybody was thinking they were going to be that one person. You see them all like, I hope it's me. The reason I ended up saying, "You get a car, you get a car, you get a car," because that first black woman who goes, "I got it, it's me." And then someone next to her said, "No, I got it. So I thought, oh, we're going to have pandemonium with everybody thinking, no, I'm the one that got it. And I was screaming it because they were screaming so loud, nobody could hear what I was saying. Oh my gosh.
I know, who could believe it? Oh, there they are!
Oh my gosh, that was so fun. So many things. Do you know what? Also, the day before, when the bows first came, the bows were too small. So, I mean, that's why everybody was up all night long, is because the bows were too small for the car. You needed the bow to cover the whole car. And when I went through and I saw them, I went, all these bows have to go because they're too small. We need larger bows, because what you want to be able to do is to drive the car home and have the big bow when you get there. You don't want, those little Christmas bows that are like the little pointy things? Yeah, you don't want that. You want a big bow. And my gosh, there's a shot of me somewhere with the red suit on and the red bows, and it worked, Gail.
Please welcome Senator Barack Obama.
Look at how sweetie pie young he is.
Okay.
You got all my cousins in here.
All your family members. A couple. Anyway, we're obviously, you all know we taped this show in Chicago. People who are watching around the world, Chicago's in Illinois. This is my senator, my favorite senator.
Yeah, that's right.
I knew then he was going to be president of the United States. Not only did I know it, I was saying it out loud. I remember having at my house a great dinner party for a group of women that I call legends. So I had this legends ball, and I did a whole weekend, and I had him to come and speak. This was in 2005. And I remember standing in the room of all of these legendary women and men, including Coretta Scott King and her children, and Maya Angelou and Cicely Tyson and Sidney Poitier and Quincy Jones. All of them were there. There were 400 people at this event. And I introduced him as the U.S. senator who would one day be president of the United States. And I remember Ruby Dee coming up to me afterwards and say, baby, we can't even pronounce his name. How are you going to be president? And so years later, in 2008, after he won, they were all the elders were stunned.
I just got back from vacation and recently, and I was sitting at the spa, and everybody were all talking about you. And out of 6 women at the table, everybody was slaying your name. They were slaying. You got called everything.
Yo mama.
Yo mama. No, and they transposed the B's and the O's and the B's.
Barama.
Barama.
I know.
Yeah.
It's tough.
And
It's tough.
I was told in the beginning, I don't know if you know this, I was told when I first started out to change my name to Susie because they said nobody would ever, do I look like a Susie to you? But that nobody would ever remember it.
There's a line in a Maya Angelou poem, actually I think it's in the poem she wrote to me called Continue, where she says, if there should ever come a time, be willing to risk everything for the good thing. And I will tell you, I was willing to risk my popularity. I was willing to risk, losing audience. I was willing to risk because I believed that this was supposed to happen. I believed so strongly. It wasn't even like, the rah-rah thing. It was like a spiritual thing.
I think that both of us, represent what's possible in this nation, and that's part of the magic of this country is that we can make ourselves, and despite the cards that are dealt to us.
I believe that's so. That, for me and all that I've been able to accomplish, it says that this is what is possible.
Right.
This is what is possible.
One of the reasons I hold on to my own sense of hope and optimism is because of that conversation and many conversations that I've had with Barack Obama, who reminded me and continues to remind me and all of us that we have been through some really darker times. We've been in some really tough times. And if you look at history even prior to the Civil War, we've been in some really tough times. And so that gives me hope that we can get through any time. But let me just tell you, you don't even have to play it. I was like, that's how I was then. You can tell because my voice is like 4 octaves higher than it normally is. I was nervous, and I wanted this to be a good platform for him. I wanted people to see what I had seen, but I was nervous. I'm not nervous anymore. That's how my relationship has changed. It's like, hey, how you doing?
You told Harpo to beat me. It was that mule, Paul. Old Joy, old Joy the mule, I tell you, I was out there trying to plow that Northfield, and the mule just went crazy. He started kicking and bucking, hitting it right there. Bust my eye, bust my lip. All my life I had to fight. I had to fight my daddy, I had to fight my uncles, I had to fight my brothers. Girl, child ain't safe in the family men's. But I ain't never thought I had to fight in my own house.
I love this clip. First of all, I see this clip and I think about how hot it was. I remember this whole time, it was like 104 degrees. This was early in the morning. You see the sunlight coming through. This is the first shot of the day. And I remember Whoopi was late to set. So when I did the very first take, we were standing around, we're waiting on Whoopi. And then I said to Stephen, I can do it. She doesn't have to be here. I can do it. So I did that first take with the clipboard. And I just said, tell me where to look. And I look right there and I walk through the corn. And I remember the corn was hitting me in the face. It really was a release for me because I had been so scared. I was terrified. I was so terrified. I never wanted anything in my life more than I wanted to be in this movie. So I was so nervous that I was going to get thrown off the movie because I didn't know how to act. It was my first time ever acting. And I'd go back to the hotel room at night. And I was reading all these books and Stanislavski and the method. And what does that mean, the method? And I know you got to figure out a way to tell the truth, but you got to be yourself, but you got to tell the truth, but you also got to be the character. How do you do that? And I just thought any minute Steven Spielberg is going to throw me off of this movie. And at the end of the film, he did say to me, I knew you were scared. Makes me want to cry. He goes, I knew you were really afraid. but I could see that the fear was working for you.
I loves Hopper. God knows I do. But I kill him dead before I let him beat me. And that's a hoof print. Does it look like a hoof print, that, Paul?
No, that looked like a fist print. Right
No, sir. No, sir. Ain't no fist touch my face. No, sir.
Years before, I'd heard that Steven Spielberg is going to do this movie called The Color Purple. I had gotten the book the day the book was released. I was in the bookstore standing in line for that book. I had given the book to every human being I could possibly give it to. I had told every human being, you know, they're going to be doing a movie. They're going to be doing a movie. And I thought, I'm going to find a way to be in that movie. But I thought I would be best girl, because when you go to the credits, it has best boy, and that's the last thing on the credits. So I thought whatever the best boy is, I'm going to convince them that I can be the girl for that. So to then get a call out of nowhere that you're going to be in this movie, this movie changed my life.
Now, you want a dead son-in-law, Miss Seeley? You keep on advising him like you doing.
This life be over soon. Heaven lasts always.
Girl, you ought to bash Mr. head open and think about heaven later.
I only had 2 weeks vacation and I needed 2 months to film this movie. And so I gave up all of my vacation for the next 5 years in order to do this movie. And then when it came time to renegotiate, I thought, I never want to be in that position again. And so that decision caused me to take the risk of owning myself and owning the show. All of that happened because of Color Purple.
Today, all new, a landmark Oprah show event.
Your husbands, sons, brothers.
How many of you were abused by more than one?
200 men courageously stand together to say they were all molested.
When you see the vulnerability and the innocence of the little boys, I mean, as I've looked at the pictures of that all of you are holding right now,
Yo,
I think that
give it to me.
is who you
Give
really
it to
are.
the Oprah show,
That
will
is
you?
who you really are.
My favorite moment in any interview is when either a person says it out loud, I never thought of it that way before, or you could see in their eyes something just happened and they never thought of it this way before. And the reason why this show is so moving to me with these men is because those men sitting in that audience with Tyler Perry and Dr. Fratkin had never thought of it that way before. They had carried the shame. They had blamed themselves. They had never known that there was anybody else who felt the way they did, not to mention 200 men sitting in a room holding pictures of themselves at the age that they were abused. So, I mean, I just thought that was phenomenal.
These courageous men are standing together to lift the veil of shame today, because what happened to them as young boys has profoundly affected who they have become as men.
I think being a victim of abuse myself, I know that I was defined by shame for most of my life. Vanity Fair ain't gonna get me crying in here, I can tell you that right now. Just stop it right now. But I was defined by that shame for so many years, and it's actually the Oprah show that freed me. On my own show, I was interviewing a young girl who was 12 or 13 years old, and she thought that her teacher loved her, who's 42. And we later ended up talking to him about how he groomed her, how every single movie made. And so it is my conversations with people who've actually had these heinous acts against children that helped me to understand it wasn't my fault. So understanding, for example, that the man who was molesting his 13-year-old daughter had planned it. He planned every game. He planned every touch. He planned what he was going to do. He planned it. Helped free me from feeling the shame of, oh, it must have been my fault. And I think doing this show for so many men, freed them.
I need to do this for my family. This is not a surprise to anybody. It's really sad that it's got to this point, but I've got to do something for my own mental health, for my wife's, and for Archie's as well, because I could see where this was headed.
They didn't want him to be a prince or a princess, not knowing what the gender would be, which would be different from protocol, and that he wasn't going to receive security.
What?
It was really hard.
Well, first of all, this is in Montecito. It's just right down the street from them. It's right down the street from me. This had been postponed probably 3 times because this was 2021. I was still in my crazy I can't leave the house period. So I didn't leave the house for 322 days. By the time we finally sat down, I think they were both ready. They didn't know, obviously, anything that I was going to ask them, but I had said to them ahead of time, I'm going to try to cover everything. This interview took 3.5 hours. And as is always the case for me, I want it to be a win-win for you. So I was just trying to carefully go through everything that had come up in the past.
I've always valued independence. I've always been outspoken, especially about women's rights. I mean, that's the sad irony of the last 4 years, is I've advocated for so long for women to use their voice. And then I was silent.
Were you silent or were you silenced?
The latter.
Okay, very nice. I don't think I've done it since. I don't know where the hell that came from. Whoop. Okay. I wanted to be clear because was she silenced? Were people telling her not to talk? That's why I said that. I said it for clarification because I didn't want later to hear, well, no, it wasn't that. It really was that I was silenced. They wouldn't let me talk. So it was all for clarification.
My father and my brother, they are trapped. They don't get to leave. And I have huge compassion for that.
I used to live above the store at Marshall Fields. I lived above the store at Marshall Fields. So my apartment in Chicago was above the store. That was a big department store in Chicago. And on the way home, there would always just be a display in the window of what was on sale. And there was the Clinique display of, like, you got a whole free Clinique kit of cleanser, night cream, eyeliner, lipstick, the whole thing in a little green bag, okay? And I remember saying to myself, oh, I'm going to go get that free Clinique bag. And because I went to work at 5:30 in the morning and didn't get home to 10 o'clock at night, I only had Saturdays to do it. And one day I go out on a Saturday that week to get the free Clinique bag. Marshall Fields, I'm going to go downstairs, take the elevator, go through the turnstile door and go in, get that free Clinique thing and go home. And every single step I made, somebody would stop me. And I'm like, they're going to be out of those Clinique bags. And I never got there because every time I went to turn this corner to go to this, there's a Clinique counter. I'm already at Revlon. It's right over there. I would get stopped by somebody else. And I ended up turning around and going back home. And I thought, well, how foolish of me to think I could go to Marshall Fields on a Saturday and not get stopped. And so that's the way I started approaching it. Like, if you don't want to be bothered, stay home. If you want to keep your privacy, then don't go out. If you want to go to a restaurant and you want to have, you're having out to dinner with Stedman and Stedman was like, why people are coming up all the time, then let's stay home and eat. And so that has been my approach. Very different, though, I think, than being royalty or being even a movie star.
My guest today is Kristen Cabot. And while you may not recognize her name, I am guessing that you will recognize her face from the most viewed video of 2025. And you thought it would blow over in a few days, as you had been told.
As I've been told.
Yes.
That definitely didn't happen. But I came back to my house that was a place that was really like my safe space, as your home typically is. And it became a place that was as unsafe as any place could be because a local radio station gave out my address.
Can you believe that? Look at her face. She feels like we do. What? I read the New York Times article. And as I was reading the New York Times article, I was like, whoa, I didn't know that. Didn't know that she was separated from her husband and her husband was also at the concert and her husband was the person who came through and supported her the most through all of this. And I thought, so misunderstood, so devalued and taken down as a woman. Even if she had not agreed to speak to me, it's somebody I would have wanted to just call up on the phone and have a conversation with her about it and say, my heart goes out to you.
So from that day I returned, there was paparazzi there for weeks. They wouldn't leave. I had people trespassing and looking in my windows. We had people doing drive-bys and yelling and honking. We had my phone.
With your children home.
Yes, with my children home. My phone was ringing around the clock.
You know what? First of all, can we give a shout out to the guy in green? Everything you were thinking, he thought it first and you were like, oh yeah, I feel that way. He was like, yeah, girl. Mm-hmm. Anyway, I think context matters. And I think we've all lost the playbook on that because people just, jump to their own conclusions without any kind of discernment. I just feel like you need context in order to have discernment and to come to a conclusion or a decision that's based on at least some version of the whole story. I think we learned a lot from her. And I think, even though lots of people have not been in a position where you're up on the big screen and you go viral and it's the most watched video of all times, every one of us has had a moment. If you live long enough, you will have a moment where you don't want to get out of bed because something has happened that made you feel like you lost yourself or you lost your identity or you lost something. I remember for me, it was my sister had gone to the National Enquirer and sold a story about me getting pregnant at 14 years old. And that's the one big secret I had held my whole life. And I thought that if anybody ever knew that story, I carried so much shame about it. I felt like if anybody ever heard that story, my life would be over. And I literally, for 3 days, could not get out of bed. So I know this feeling of not wanting to get out of bed. And anybody who's listening to me has had their own, I didn't want to get out of bed story. And so to be able to put that in context, I think is a powerful thing because I think it offers a sense of our own shared humanity and how we are, how we belong to each other. And that there's no story that you've experienced that someone else hasn't already felt. So my intention when I started the Oprah show, and I say it on the very first National Oprah, when I say, this is the very first National Oprah Winfrey show, that clip that I've seen a million times. One of the things I say is that one of the reasons I wanted to do this show is to let people know that you're not alone. And at the end of that 25-year run, that is exactly what we did. We allowed people to see that they are not alone, but that we all belong to each other. I think that's it.